Hey everyone, this is S.M. Pratt, and today we're going to talk about risk. Risk is inherent to everything in life, whether it's economics or collectibles. Risk is opportunity's shadow. If you go sit down with your financial advisor, they're going to rate your portfolio from conservative to speculative. Collectibles sit way beyond speculative. It doesn't matter if it's an energy card, all the way to a Pikachu Illustrator. There's some degree of risk involved. So what I want to do here, go over some of the themes or reoccurring questions I get within the hobby, or perhaps some of the general themes for 2009 at large. A lot of people want to sit and do nothing, make an average move, and miraculously be successful, be a millionaire. And what I want to do here is emphasize that no exceptional outcome exists without exceptional variables. No big gain is made without big risk, period. It's inherent to the process. Even if you want to pull out that exceptional situation where someone's lucky and they win the lottery, they found a card that someone didn't know was worth $1 million, there's the exceptional element right there. That element of exceptional luck is the exceptional element for the exceptional outcome. Whether you're the person who's first to market and bought this Alpha 10 Black Lotus, or you bought the Illustrator, you bought the First Ed base box, Mickey Mantle, pick your poison. That is that exceptional scenario. You did something when there was no indication. There was no indicator that these items were going to grow in value. That's that exceptional variable for the exceptional outcome. So I'm going to go over short-term investment, long-term investment, and then strategic risk. That's the only way really you can throttle risk and eliminate some risk. Because at the end of the day, again, risk is opportunity's shadow. It's inherent to everything you do. So let's start with an example, because I know people like examples. Here's a great example of big risk, big reward. This is a PSA 10 Alpha Black Lotus signed by the artist Christopher Rush. This is literally on the top, tippy top of the mountain. It's the freshly fallen snowflake right there on the top. This is it right here. This is peak whale, literal, figurative alpha of alpha. This is it. This is the holy grail. Now, this card around 2013 or 14, correct me if I'm wrong, Rudy, sold for around $50,000. I remember being in DC at Worlds at the time and hearing about it. Ironically, DC now 5 years later is at Worlds. It's at Worlds again for Pokemon, and you can safely add a zero to that price today. So that person back then who set the record, who bought it at that new record price at the time, obviously made a killing. If it was that same individual, even if it traded hands, you could safely add a zero from $50,000 to $500,000 in valuation for that card. And this is a great example of, again, big risk, big reward. Now, if you took that same $50,000 and bought that Steam Siege way in the back where it belongs, you obviously aren't going to have the same gain. So this gets into the strategy element, the strategic risk element. The only way to eliminate risk, and again, eliminate some risk, because you can't eliminate it all, there's no guarantees here, is to have some form of strategy. So if you analyze that Steam Siege box, you're like, okay, this is a new set, not really much going for it. It's pretty memeable because it's basically every card's an energy card. The rarity is non-existent. It's printed into the ground. It's just more common than probably the paper it was printed on. So at the end of the day, you probably don't want to spend 50 grand on that. Now contrast that with this Alpha Lotus. First of all, Black Lotus is the card in Magic. It's OP AF, and it's also the highest grade, and it's also signed by the late artist who designed it, Christopher Rush. I mean, it's absolutely maxed out. It's the furthest item removed from something like a Steam Siege box. So at the end of the day, you understand in this general example that the strategy involved with something like this is probably going to pay out. There's a higher probability that someone else might want this piece of history. There's a very low probability that someone at 50K especially is going to want that dusty in the back shadow Steam Siege box. There's probably not many people that are going to line up for that. So that's just an obvious general breakdown of how strategy works. Strategy in hobbies essentially comes from, I always harp on this, genuine interest, being engaged. That's where all this stuff blossoms. It naturally develops from being interested, being engaged, not being worried about, is it cool for me to like Pokemon? There's no experience you can tell me, no words you can tell me that I haven't heard. I was doing this stuff in like the mid-2000s when it was just no kind of social benefit. You had to like come out as a Pokemon collector. You had to be like, all right, guys, mom and dad, I collect Pokemon. You had to straight up come out talking about how you enjoy the hobby. Where now it's a little more mainstream. But the point is that being engaged and doing that thing because of genuine interest is going to develop that inherent vocabulary and understanding, and it's going to put you ahead of the next guy. It always put me ahead of the next guy because I just was fully into this. I was, again, talk about that 50K purchase. I was doing the same thing with the Illustrator. I was doing the same thing with trophy cards. I was like, I just love this stuff and I want it. I want as much of it as I can get. Prices that people were like, oh, it's only worth 5,000, 10,000. I'm like, I don't care. I will pay what it takes to get it. So that's what I did. And sure enough, after 10 years, which gets us into like the short-term, long-term investment element, after 10 years, that stuff has greatly matured. Again, because of the strategy involved, and a lot of it wasn't really like big brain, I want to make a ton of money strategy. A lot of it came from genuine interest. Again, always emphasizing that every successful person in hobbies has to have a genuine interest. It just, otherwise you have to come in with like oil tycoon money and just like buy everything and wait 10 years. But until that video game scenario occurs, genuine interest is the way to go. So this leads us into the short-term, long-term investment definitions I think might need to be explained to Pokemon. Because right now, it's pretty much just all flippage. It's buy it, sell it, flip it, rip it, flip it, rip it. That's pretty much it. So a short-term investment is usually 3 years or less. I would say like 3 to 5 years, minus sign. That's usually what you're going to expect for a short-term investment. Now, long-term investment is different. It's going to be 10 plus. Of course, these are just like general, just general lines I'm drawing here. They're not absolute, but that's what you're going to look at. So for those people who love the microfiber, they love the throw blanket, they love their memory foam pillow, and they want to do nothing, they want to take no risk, and they just want to sit there, the way to go is long term. So this is obvious for most people who do classical investing. If you bought Dow Jones, the gain you're going to get in probably a year will be tremendously less than Dow Jones over 30 years. Go look at the difference from 30 years ago, Dow Jones, and then a year. Even with this crazy cowboy up and down thing that we're experiencing right now, 30 years is going to yield a better return. So, again, going back to this idea of adding an exceptional variable for an exceptional outcome. If you are that person who just wants to sit back and have a passive, slow motion, incremental growth, the exceptional element there is patience. Patience is that risk. If you're locking up money for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, you're locking up capital that you can go and buy Cheetos and Mountain Dew with. You can go have a good time, go out, do whatever it is, turn that money into $0 in a couple hours. That is the risk you take, is that you have to lock up this money for a long period of time. So again, going back to this idea, exceptional outcome only exists because of an exceptional variable. That's it. Even if you want to go the passive route and you want to buy, the Dow Jones, S&P, pick your poison, these conservative options, the necessary variable there for success is that exceptional patience. Patience is a virtue. So right now, bringing it back into hobbies, Pokemon doesn't really have that at all. If you're doing the S.M. Pratt business model of buying something, holding it, forgetting it, hopefully you discover it 10 years from now, that's a very rare bird. That does not fly by often. That'll be the Ho-Oh in the first episode. It's one and done. You're never going to see it again. 90% of the market right now is 3 years or less. And now when I say that, I'm not really trying to throw shade or criticize, the hobby, because I've talked about this before. Pokemon's very young. The average age is very young. So 10 years for some of the guys right now doing this, that could be like half of the life they've lived. You got people that are still towards the end of school, or maybe they're still in college, they just got out, they don't really know what they're going to do yet. So at the end of the day, 10 years is like perhaps half the life they've lived. So imagining that at that age is really difficult. Now for the older senior citizens in their 30s and over, yes, this is at least 30 years old, those individuals, the older category, the mature category, understand that there's a longer game at play here, especially when you look at the older hobbies, when you look at our older brother like Magic, and then when you go further in the things like sports, numismatics, artwork, and then if you want to go big brain, like when you get into historical stuff, if you're looking to buy Hammurabi's Code, if you're looking to buy that tier of an artifact, you understand that 3 years is like a blip. It's just it's a moment. It's not even on the map. So when I'll give you the free Patreon advice. When people come to me on Patreon, they ask me that magical question, What will my cardboard be worth 5 years from now, 10 years from now? When I can predict the future, I'll add the $1 million Patreon option for that when I can do that. But until then, you should probably just do what most people aren't doing. Kind of like when I started this channel. I was like, wait, there's not enough discussion about the hobby, so I'm going to start talking about the hobby. A lot of people aren't being patient right now. Maybe that's where the opportunity lies. Again, risk is no guarantee. Just giving you a suggestion. I'm not telling you to throw money, spend money, do anything. All I'm saying is for those people who are always trying to look for that thing no one is doing, patience is the thing right now a lot of people aren't doing. It's something a lot of people perhaps can't afford. Again, because if they are younger, low capital, they don't know what's going on. I get it. I was there. Maybe they can't afford it right now. Maybe when they're older, like in Magic. Most of these guys in Magic, we're talking $500,000. These are guys who have done startups, invested in startups, guys who are in their 40s, knee deep in their career. Even if you're talking average wages, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of average wages, that's a lot of momentum. Again, if you're that person who's conservative, puts it away incrementally, add that 10, 15, 20 years of time, you're going to be comfortable. Millionaire next door. There's not always one path. There's different paths to the same destination of success. However, there is no path of instant millionaire, average move equals exceptional endpoint. That's not a thing. You always need an exception to have an exceptional outcome. There's always an exceptional variable to exceptional outcome. And let me end with, again, what I started with. Risk is opportunity's shadow. With all this discussion, keep in mind there's no guarantee. Risk is not your friend. The only way to hedge it a little bit is having strategy, understand what you're getting into. These are all knowledge markets. Hobbies are all knowledge markets. But you could be that guy who buys this, let's say, at $1 million. This item goes to $1.5 million, $2 million, kind of like the original alpha artwork. It echoes that trend. You might be the guy who buys it in the million category, and it might not appreciate. It might dip for some reason. It might be stagnant. Who knows? So you always have to keep that in mind. Just because you have the pattern of 5 years of movement, exponential meteoric rise, that doesn't mean it'll continue indefinitely. Keep that in mind when I'm saying this, that we have the past to look at. Yes, it does repeat itself. But again, there's always no guarantee. Even to this date, I still worry about certain moves, but I worry a lot less than I did 10 years ago. I spend a lot more than I did 10 years ago because of this conditioning of understanding strategic risk, understanding how to strategize and throttle back and forth between spending $50K on Steam Siege or spending it on something like this Alpha Lotus. So there you go, guys. That's what I have. Hopefully this discussion helped you as usual. I think this theme is an ongoing conversation. I can come back a year from now, even 6 months from now, probably talk about it and talk about some more, examples and things like that. But let me know what you think. Let me know if you agree, disagree, if this was useful. You know the deal. Till next time, guys.